The following video is an Instructable on how to repurpose an old t-shirt for Halloween, making it an emoji shirt using 4 items purchased at the 99-cent only store, including chalk, a sponge brush, a package of fabric paint, and some contact paper. Okay, so here's my stencil for my emoji t-shirt. This is an emoji for putting somebody in the friend zone. And so I've got here a 9 by 8.5 piece of contact paper that I cut, and I'm going to go ahead and use my inkjet printer to print the same stencil onto this contact paper. Okay, so I was afraid this was going to happen. Because it's contact paper and by design it's supposed to repel stains and water, sure enough the ink doesn't adhere to the contact paper. So the way I got around this was I went ahead and flipped my image horizontally and I printed it on the back of the contact paper. And so this way, when the ink dries, it's not going to run. At this point, what I'm going to go ahead and do is cut out the black parts of my stencil, and I'll show you what I do after that. Okay, there's my pattern. There's my stencil. I know it's not much to look at, but when I peel the contact paper off, it'll flatten out very nicely. And here's the t-shirt that I'm going to use. Now I've marked the center of my chest with a piece of chalk. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and stick this stencil onto the shirt, and then we'll go from there. Okay, this is where a colored contact paper might be better served. Because now that I've got the clear contact paper on, I can barely see it. So what I did was I put my original pattern behind the t-shirt just so that I could see where I was placing it, the contact paper in relation to the pattern. And I also masked it off on the sides to make sure I don't get any paint outside of the stencil area. I also put this cardboard in between the shirt so that it doesn't bleed over to the other side. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 3 primary colors, red, yellow, and blue, and I'm going to mix equal parts in a small cup. Equal parts of these colors should yield a color pretty close to black. So I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Okay, I've got about equal parts of red, yellow, and blue, and I don't have a popsicle stick, so I'm going to use the back of this dried marker that I'm going to throw away anyways as a stirrer. So let's see what this thing looks like. Okay, so far so good. It's starting to look a little bit more like a purple than it is a black, and I believe that the opposite of purple on the color wheel is yellow. So I'm going to add a little more yellow and see if that helps me make this a little darker. I don't know if it shows up on camera, but it looks like that's working. Okay, now that I've made my black fabric paint, or at least something that's close to black, I'm going to go ahead and start painting my shirt. So I'll show you that next. Okay, sorry you're seeing me do this upside down, but I think this is probably the best camera angle. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and start using my sponge brush to paint my t-shirt. And some folks use a swiping motion. I'm going to dab just because I feel that'll be better for this project. So I'm just going to start dabbing the paint onto the shirt. I'm gonna start my dabs in the center of my painting areas and then work my way to the outside so that I'm getting more paint on the shirt than I am on the stencil. Okay, you get the picture. I'm going to go ahead and pause here and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Okay, here's what it looks like after I finish painting over the stencil. The fabric paint says it takes 4 hours to cure, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this sit for about 2 hours. Then I'm going to go ahead and peel off the stencil and then let it continue to cure for another 2 hours after that. So I'll show you what that looks like when I'm done with that. Okay, so I lit a halogen light onto my pattern just to help it along while it dried, and I'm going to go ahead and take the stencil off. Now, although this thing is perhaps dry to the touch, it might still be a little tacky and not fully cured, so I'm definitely going to do this with caution because I don't want to create any runs or anything in my new pattern. So let's see how this thing turned out. I'm going to work from the outside corners in. I don't know if there's a best way to do this or not, but it seems to make sense to me. Okay, it doesn't look bad. Here is my emoji shirt, my Halloween shirt. You could tell the paint may have run in a couple of different corners where I over dabbed it there and maybe on the fingertip there, but not really the kind of thing you notice from a distance, and I'm actually really happy with the way this came out. This probably cost me about $3, maybe $4, and an old t-shirt that I already had at home. So there's an idea for making yourself a Halloween t-shirt. Many thanks to the 99-cent store for providing all the supplies for me, and that's it. Have a happy Halloween.